Welcome to this presentation on transforming for a resilient and sustainable future. My name is Peter Ball. I'm the Director for Engagement in the University of York's Management School. I'm going to talk to you about resilience as well as agility, and I'll build those into the concept of sustainability. I'm then going to give you a wealth of examples that will bring alive that idea of agility and that idea of resilience, and I hope that you can either take ideas from those directly, or you can take away the principles that surround those. I will build this around sustainability and get you thinking about some basic as well as some advanced insights. And then I'll close the presentation by talking about what you can get from the University of York's Management School, some very simple support that's free and immediate, right through to longer term partnerships with us, or even wider with the whole of the university through something called management KTPs, or management knowledge transfer partnerships. So I hope you get enjoyment out of this presentation, either from the ideas or the concepts and the specifics that I'm going through, or the way you can access the help from the university. This is the negative side of the presentation. I'll build up into something more optimistic as we go through the presentation. Depending on how far your memory goes back, you might remember some of these events. The left-hand one of the volcanic eruption is Iceland, and that was a number of years ago. Some of us were stuck in parts of the world and had to make either a short flight and land journey or all land journey back to the UK. Iceland's got volcanic activity due very, very soon, hopefully this time without the ash. But that was an unexpected major event that caused a lot of disruption. Moving to the petrol forecourts of the year 2000, with the blockades of the oil refineries, led to virtually immediate closures of fuel stations. So within days, fuel within the UK had gone, and some of the roads were looking just like they are or have been over the last year during the pandemic, empty, with no access to fuel to power our cars. Looking down at the bottom, a very depressing picture of the tsunami that hit Japan with a horrendous loss of life. But if I can callously ignore that and focus on the industrial disruption, the point about this is that this was a natural event, just like Iceland, but different from the petrol example. So this was unforeseen and couldn't be controlled. Led to significant disruption within Japan, but also around the world, as parts were very difficult to source. And the final one is of Lehman Brothers in the US, which is one of the trigger events for the global meltdown and major recession of 2007, 2008. But that was a man-made disaster in the making, but again it wasn't predicted at that scale, and caused major disruption. So those are the negative sides, and sticking on this negative theme, we're going to have more. We will have more. We possibly know what some of these are going to be, others we don't, but we just know that there's going to be more major disruptions. So the left-hand image here is supposed to convey carbon. We know there's going to be a challenge on carbon in the years ahead. What shape or form exactly is debatable, but we are going to have more and more restrictions on our use of carbon and our release of carbon, and those restrictions are either going to come out of governmental action or consumer action. The middle one, you're not supposed to be able to see very well, is a blackout. There's been blackouts, very famous blackouts around the world. This one was a US one, but this is where there are power shortages and or power failures and entire grids shut down. And finally, one in recent history within the UK and across Europe is the carbon dioxide shortage that led to a lot of disruption, especially in food and drink. Not just drink, but food production as well. And these are just examples of things that have happened. I can't predict with a crystal ball what's going to happen next, but I can predict that there's going to be something, and there'll be shortages. For example, at the moment, there's challenges on materials for batteries, and electronics supplies are short at the moment, and there'll be shortages of other things as well. They might not be as major as these examples, but there'll be different disruptions of different orders of magnitude, and we just need to be ready in some shape or form, which is a cheap and easy thing to say. So maybe there's some ideas here that could help. So we can't stop these major events, but we maybe could weaken their impact and even profit from their impact. Lots of words. I'll pick out the big ones. Agility, resilience. So agility is about this ability to move quickly and to adapt, possibly to innovate, but to move and flex. And the thing that I want to bring out in the slides ahead are more to do with thinking about what your capabilities are, rather than just what you do today. It's what capabilities have you got that help you do what you're doing today. That's the important thing, not what you're doing today, but the capabilities that enable that. And I'll give you some examples. The second one is resilience, and it's the ability of an organisation to cope with the stresses, to cope with the disruptions, so to absorb what's happened, to recover, but not just recover almost as good or as good as, but to recover and thrive. And I want to use that word thrive several times in this presentation. So agility and resilience, and I'm going to bring that together with something called sustainability. And I have been taken aback by how much the world has moved over the last two to 3 years. The thinking within wider business has accelerated, as well as the what both campaigners are doing, but also the movement of consumers and public opinion. So sustainability has transformed in its presence. I know this has been happening for decades. We've known about these issues for decades, many decades, not just one or two, but 5, 6, 7, 8. So we've known about these, but they are really taking off, and I'll give you some examples. So there's a financial stability that we've always known about, that we've got to trade in the short term and the long term, and we've got to build the financial reserves to thrive in the long term. Environmentally, we talk about minimising impact on environment or being environmentally friendly. That's in some ways the old thinking, and now we're much more talking about preventing, and we're talking about neutrality. But the ideas of restoration are building, and there are organisations that are looking at how to be restorative. And by restorative, what I mean is through the actions of the organisation, they are better as a result. So the environment is better as a result of their actions. And it can be from something simple, like simple but challenging, like a jeans company in Vietnam, where the water coming into the jeans factory is of one level of quality. By the time it leaves, it is drinking water quality. So the quality of that water has improved as it's gone through the company, not deteriorated. And there's plenty of other examples, in some ways, some of them related to farming, where the land is better as a result of the farming than it was before. And then socially, it's not just taking care of the people within your four walls or the sort of the fence around the company, but wider. wider across the supply chain and all that an organisation reaches. We know of examples of companies that, for example, make trainers who got caught out with undesirable practices, bad practices in their supply chain. It's no longer enough not to know about things. You've got to try and find out what's there, and you've got to reassure that there's nothing in there, and there's nothing in there in the supply chain that's going to affect you now, but also as the world changes and attitudes change, it's not going to come back and bite you in 5 or 10 years' time. Some of these sound restrictive and costing money, but the bit on the left I'll bring back to thriving. It's about doing those things and doing even better, doing some great things, making more money, supporting the environment, being socially responsible and ethically responsible, and building communities and supporting people locally and around the world, rather than gradually eroding things. I want to move to pictures and to give you examples. Some of these examples are from actual companies that are named. Some of them are just using images from companies. These are all images from companies. These are not actual examples labelled here. The left-hand side, these are agility examples. The defence industry is a classic for agility. The defence companies will take requirements of contract requirements from governments and build to or engineer and build to order what that contract needs. And these contracts are different every time for different products with different capabilities, and it's all about being able to flex what the company is good at doing into making what is needed. Contract electronics manufacturers, CEMs in the top picture of a digital circuit board, are very good at this. They can flex what they are doing to match the customer orders. So, for example, I worked with a contract electronics manufacturers making, I'll call them small electronic devices that you and I have always interacted with over the decades, and they moved from making those things, which are about this big, to making things about this big to go in the North Sea underwater. Their capabilities were assembling electronics to high specification. They were good at making the devices, but that wasn't really what they were good at. They were good at being flexible, doing what their customer needed, and switching really, really fast. On the far right, Formula One picture of lorries. I was naive and always used to think these were for transporting things around the world. I remember 10 years ago going around a Formula One company and looking at their what's called additive manufacturing machines. These are machines that build up products. They don't take material away to make the products. They build them, they grow them in these machines. And I went, well, they're small enough to put on a container and ship around the world to the racetrack. And it was like, let's move on. Let's have a different conversation here. I was naive. I thought these lorries were there for transportation, but these are mini factories at the back of the Formula One racetracks that make product or components to order, and then they're not flown across the world. They're walked across the car park to the pits and fitted on the cars. Final one at the bottom is of a gym. Gyms are currently closed during this third lockdown, is it, in the pandemic, and some gyms have the view that they are good at providing equipment to help people get fit, keep their fitness. There's an example I know of a gym that was about to be sold until the pandemic arrived, and within days, hours, that deal was off. So they had a bricks and mortar type business, and the buyer didn't want it anymore. 6 months later, still in the pandemic, the business was sold to the same, the original potential buyer, for the same or as good a price, or better price, because the gym realised that it wasn't good at providing equipment, it was good at helping people get fit. Within 3 days, it had pivoted the business to online. It was back trading, revenue coming in within 3 days of the gym being closed. So they knew what they were good at. They knew they knew how to provide a service to their customers. Some more examples. 2 of these are actually from companies that I'm naming. The Mitsubishi one isn't. I remember sitting in a rather depressing meeting, in some ways depressing, but also optimistic about Brexit a number of years ago, 4 to 5 years ago, is it now? And as we talked about what different companies were doing, I realised that they weren't addressing a bad problem and trying to fix something and trying to put sticky tape, sticking plaster over things. What they were actually doing is they were preparing for the future. They were building up stronger, more flexible businesses. The example of the forklift truck is they cross-trained all of their workers to do any job within a certain area. And so if they lost staff, perhaps because people no longer wanted to come to this country or to that particular company, they'd had other people who could do the job very, very quickly. So they'd insulated their business from shocks. The UPVC recycling is from Uracell. There's an example on their website. They now control the post-consumer waste recycling. They'll take back the product from people's houses through the contractors. They'll recycle it, make it into as good as, if not better, products to put back into people's homes. So they've secured a supply of UPVC. They've reduced costs, improved the quality of their product, and they're working across the supply chain, and they'll take anybody's waste because they know that there's value in it. Suma, really interesting company. I believe they still pay everyone the same wage within the company. They self-organise, so it's not traditional management structure, and people often work 2 days in one area and 3 days in another. 2 days in accounts, 3 days in a warehouse. 3 days on the road, 2 days in the warehouse. They have flexibility according to their personal career ambitions and interests, and they can flex. They can move from the warehouse to the marketing as long as they've got the skills and ambitions, and they can see a future for themselves there. When times need, they've got the flexibility to meet customer demand because they've got flexibility in their thinking. 2 examples, and then I'll move on to some big ideas. The first one here is on water, and the second one is on electricity. There's quite a few examples of companies that have reduced their water consumption because good practice. They've reduced their costs, but they've also done other things. One is they've got themselves below a threshold, so when the drought restrictions come in and the water companies gradually go down the list of progressively smaller organisations, they are not the next in the list to be knocked off from their supply and restricted because they've reduced their consumption so much. Others have done the same, but they've done it so they can expand and they can make more product because the pipe coming into the company is just too small to provide anything else than what they can get now, and digging up roads or railway lines or whatever to get a larger supply in was just going to be too costly. And the bottom right, a bit of an old picture of a recharging car. Lots of companies will be thinking about recharging sites, recharging stations outside their companies. They might be going to their board with proposals for the investment, but there might not be enough power in the area. Somebody may have got to it beforehand, and there's limited supply of power around the UK, and if suddenly too many people want to draw power from a certain area, there's going to be challenges, and some people get to the supply before others. So it's just an interesting one about how things, when they're moving rapidly, there'll be shortages in capacity, and electricity for charging cars is likely to be one of them that causes pain around the place. two big sustainability examples, and I wanted to put these out for vision. These are relatively small but thriving companies within the UK. River Simple is, I believe, sited in southern Wales. Vitsu is in Midlands, Leamington Spa. Two very different but very forward-thinking ways of working. The car on the left, no matter how much you like it, you'll never own it because it's only going to be available for hire. It's a hydrogen fuel cell car. You hire it by the kilometre. You don't pay for fuel. You don't get access to the technology. You don't get access to all the resources that built up that car. The company has really been careful about what's in its supply chain, how it's going to move product around its supply chain and keep all of that value in the car or circulating around so it can come back into future cars. So what they've tried to do is take all those externalities, all the things that happen, put it under its own control and then control it so that they can squeeze the maximum value out of it and they can minimise the price to the consumer for that kilometre moved. Consumers don't have to worry about the price per kilometre because it's the fuel used for the kilometre because it's taken up in the price. So the company is incentivised to reduce resource consumption. The one on the right of the shelving, I'm going to have to rehearse this in my head before I get it right, so forgive me for any delay. But this is a company that makes shelving products that last for life. You buy them once, you take them with you wherever you move house. You can maybe even get parts repaired. You might even be able to get help reinstalling. The company's saying is people aren't rich enough to buy cheap things. People aren't rich enough to buy cheap things. Or the other way around is they're too poor to waste their money. And their idea is you buy a high quality, relatively high price product once, you don't have repeat purchases. You'll recommend these purchases to other people, but you are so satisfied with that one-off purchase that you're not going to replenish, replace. It doesn't end up in landfill or being recycled. So some big ideas. I hope some of those big ideas make you think about things more deeply, but also the early ideas I hope provide a way of thinking, oh, there's some nuggets of little information I could use there. So moving on to what the University of York's Management School can help you with. These are all free access, light touch ways of working with us and getting help. Our masterclasses run, they've been running weekly over the pandemic, but they'll run regularly in the future, but not quite as frequently. But regardless, we get really interesting people, leading thinkers, to come and talk to us about things like what we've got today. We've got somebody on race. In a couple of weeks' time, we've got somebody on the use of consultants. A little while later, we've got somebody on personal and organisational resilience, and then we've got somebody talking about corporate pay. I'm trying to think of some of the others. We'll have people on innovation and equality and circular economy. So these are free access events, and they can spark ideas. You can get your questions into the speaker and get some interesting discussion going. Business Advisor is a way of getting free, informal, light touch contact to get advice, a sort of a sounding board. It's a bit of an academic term, but a critical friend, somebody you can talk to and say, look, I'm thinking of doing this, or I'm not sure how to do this, and it's not going to charge you anything, but it's a friendly piece of advice. Again, you need to talk to these people, or you need to do this, or come and have a chat with us, and we can work that through. And finally, consultancy. We've got two ways of supporting organisations through consultancy. One is led by the university, the other one is a student organisation, really professional student organisation. Student-led, the school-led one I run, and I was running it yesterday. I had over 20 projects running, and the groups of students had helped 21, well, 19 different organisations on 21 projects, mostly local, sort of Yorkshire, some UK, small companies, large companies, charities, community interest companies, but some international. So we've had yesterday students coming in on Zoom, all presenting, quite a lot from UK, some in China, Taiwan, wherever around the world, presenting together on how to add value in a certain area, giving advice to companies and organisations about what to do. And some of these organisations were across the UK. There was people on the line from California. So we were spread across the world, and these students adding value to organisations locally and over in the States. Right, I need to round up soon. Areas of capability, this is where we get into more detail. I talked about that change of moving into more agile and resilient types of organisations. So we've got capabilities in change and human resources, people who understand about innovation, not just innovation within an organisation, but how to open up innovation with the outside world, something called open innovation. Operations and improving manufacturing and service, and I'll talk about productivity in the next slide. We've also got a very, very strong sustainability capability, and it's about environment, it's about social, it's about circular economy, but it's the fundamentals of understanding the ethics and the fundamental impacts that products, services, operations can have. I talked about financial stability earlier on, both short and long term, so we've got the accounting and finance capability, and then we've got people who are expert in getting the messages out and professionalising sales. So there's all sorts of capability around social media and B2C as well as B2B marketing. I want to end on one capability across the university that brings in the management school as well as other parts of the university, and that's on something called knowledge transfer partnerships, KTPs. These things are called, these ones I'm going to talk about are called MKTPs or management KTPs. This idea of a KTP is a three-way partnership between a university and a business to transfer knowledge and capability from the university into the business to make that business better, and uses a third party called an associate that's employed by the university but is actually there specifically for that contract, in which you take expertise and embed it into an organisation to make it better. So I've highlighted the big words there for the most important takeaways of this slide, but on the right hand side there's a quote from Bayes on effective management and the difference between failing and being good. Well, I emphasise the word thriving, and it's going back to that word thriving. About it's not just about being good or just as good as yesterday, but it's about thriving and having a vibrant business in the widest sense. So what do you get on one of these MKTPs as part of this partnership? One is straight productivity improvements, and I think productivity is an interesting one. The national data says productivity is not improving. You look at companies and they are working hard. They are improving year upon year upon year. So they're doing things better and better each year, and through doing those things better and better, they're making savings and providing new services to customers, being more flexible to customers or whatever. And maybe at certain points in time, those productivity improvements have been that you've squeezed something so much that you need to come up with more innovative processes and change something fundamentally rather than keep on squeezing the same thing. So it's about new management practices and changing culture, and that could be changing to a more agile and resilient organisation and bringing in that idea of sustainability, those three pillars of finance, environment and social. Finally, if you want to find out more, again, I'll put the They've been important things in big letters. So Rukmal is the key to this, coordinates across the university and assembles an appropriate team to add value to the business. There's a QR code, there's a URL, there's an email, there's a name. If you just Google Rukmal, you'll find her, and she will be incredibly helpful. So thank you very much for that. I hope that's given you a taste of how the world is moving and ways that businesses can improve on that area of agility, or that ability to move very quickly, but that area of resilience to absorb shocks, and having that long-term sustainability, understanding and focus, and that drives further improvement. And I hope I've given you enough insight about how you can get help from the University of York, either within the management school or beyond. So thank you very much. My contact details are there, and I'm more than happy to signpost you to anyone else. So thank you.